Welcome to Think Tank. I'm Steve Adubato. We're coming to you from the Agnes Ferris NJTV studio in beautiful Newark, New Jersey. It is my honor on Think Tank to welcome Dr. Jo-Renee Formicola, professor of political science at Seton University, author. You'll see the cover of that book. Author of the book, Papal Policies on Clerical Sexual Abuse, God Weeps. Doctor, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
By the way, I want to make it clear that Dr. Formicola is speaking for herself and not for any particular university. To be clear. Why did you get interested in this topic?
My main area of concern and interest is church-state relations. And when the first big case broke in Boston, my concern was, well, what is this going to mean now in Boston, the most Irish Catholic city in America? How is it going to impact the way the church and the city of Boston and the state of Massachusetts are going to interact with each other?
How did it?
It was really critical because for the first time, you had civil investigations of the Archdiocese of Boston, which included things like deposing the cardinal archbishop. I mean, this is unbelievable that you would bring the cardinal in and ask him questions, and then the answers would be made public. That there would be questions about his leadership. You bring in his entire team and ask them, you know, why have you hid records? Why have you covered up things? So this was the first time that the church was really put on the defensive about the way clerical sexual abuse was being treated in their diocese.
I'm curious about this. As a Catholic, and actually taping this program Easter week, it'll air after. For those of us who have struggled with this, and we ask the question why, not just why did it happen, bad enough, why does it seem that the church hierarchy has not been more responsive and in some ways has made it worse by saying we'll handle it ourselves? Is that an oversimplification?
I don't think so. That's what I look at in my new book, and I look at the three popes who have dealt with this question. So when it first became public and the word reached the Vatican, John Paul was the person who was the Pope, and he was truly flummoxed by the entire situation. He was never able to grasp either the gravity or the scope of the problem for a variety of reasons. He was a man of a different time, a different culture, and you know, as he looked for causes and reasons, he blamed it on things like, oh, you know, the permissive sexual culture in the United States, or this is the
whatever.
Whatever.
Well, what about Pope Francis? Pope Francis came in with a clear message that things were going to change. What has happened?
I think Pope Francis has sent mixed messages as to how he thinks it should be handled and how critical he thinks it is. You know, every pope has a political agenda and a religious agenda.
They're not the same?
Not necessarily. One is based on the other. The political agenda is always based on some theological principle. So when you look at geopolitical relations and you talk about something like social justice or human rights, it's based on some sort of a theological principle.
That's right.
Okay? So when you look at Pope Francis, you see that he is attempting to change certain theological principles and move them from the right more to the left or to the center, which then maybe changes different political views on things. And
how successful has he been? By the way, I was speaking to Dr. Formicola, who has written a book, Papal Policies on Clerical Sexual Abuse, God Weeps. How successful has the Pope been?
In my own mind, I would say that he has not lived up to expectations or what people thought he would do or the powers that he has to be able to do so many more things than he's done. I think the biggest mistake thus far has really been the Papal Synod.
Explain that to folks.
Okay, so the Papal Synod was a meeting called by the Pope, and its purpose was to bring in the heads of all of the Catholic conferences around the world.
That was an opportunity.
That's right.
To do what?
To attempt to put into place some sort of a systematic way to deal with clerical sexual abuse.
And what happened?
Nothing.
Because?
Okay? Because there was no real, I think there was a will on the part of some of the members of the hierarchy, but not all the members of the hierarchy. When you talk about bishops, you're talking about their functions, their roles, their powers, et cetera. And if suddenly they feel that that's going to be diminished, this is like asking someone to watch after themselves, and you really can't have that.
You make it sound like they couldn't do it. Weren't capable of doing it.
I don't know that they necessarily were.
Okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Stay right there, Doctor. Recently, on our sister program, State of Affairs, we had a conversation with Senator Joseph Vitale, who has been working in this area for a long time, introduced legislation to change the statute of limitations on these cases, et cetera, et cetera. Take a look at the clip.
The goal is to establish that there has been, over decades, not just a pattern, but institutional abuse and a cover-up by certain bishops over time. And that abuse has not stopped. We still hear about cases today. I think the church has done a better job trying to weed out bad actors. But when you rape a child, there is no excuse. There's no justification for that, of course. And now, many years later, when they're adults, they have no remedy other than to sue their abuser or their rapist and the institution that may have enabled that abuse in court.
Doctor, let me ask you this. We listened to the senator. 5 dioceses in the state. They released 188 names of priests who were credibly accused of sexual abuse. Of the 188 names, 100 of them are dead. The rest of them, many of them not active.
Right.
What is the significance of that list, and what message does it send about how serious the church is about dealing with this?
Well, I think it's very important that people who have been abused in the past know at least that someone recognizes that the things they may have said to friends or to family that were never really taken
Even if the
seriously.
priest who did it was dead?
Yes, because at least it says you were right and what you said was true. Because people carry around a tremendous amount of guilt. They've been isolated, and this is one way by which they can be vindicated. Now, there's no real vindication for anyone who's been sexually abused. I mean, you can talk about statutes of limitations, you can talk about financial monies, et cetera. But what you're talking about is taking away the innocence of a child.
But the church has fought the statute of limitations expansion because?
Yes. Because they have reached a point, obviously, where the longer the statute of limitations goes, it means that the more people can come
You make it sound like it's an
forward.
economic issue.
I think some of it is, very definitely. Well, I mean, when you look at the fact that so many dioceses have declared bankruptcy across the United States, we haven't had that yet in New Jersey, but that could possibly be in the future.
By the way, say that again. Japan is actually is just announced investigating in their country. I want to clarify something. Cardinal Joseph Tobin, we have asked and will continue to ask to be on any one of our programs, on State of Affairs, Think Tank, one-on-one. He was recently scheduled for this particular taping because it was Holy Week. He couldn't be with us. We will ask again. The Archdiocese has argued that we are wrong in saying that they have opted not to participate. We'll continue to ask, and hopefully the Cardinal will find the time to be with us. But I just want to thank you, Doctor, for joining us. And one more time, your book is called Papal Policies on Clerical Sexual Abuse, God Weeps. Thank you for joining us on Think Tank, Dr. Formicola. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
Think Tank with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of Think Tank with Steve Adubato has been provided by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, Investors Bank, RWJ Barnabas Health, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community, United Airlines, the Fidelco Group, and by the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, Office of the Attorney General. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.